All right, welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. Uh, guess what? I told you we'd be back. I told you we'd be back with some in-depth analysis of Liam Delap. Obviously, formal announcements and all yet to be made, but we got the Here We Go. We got the Ben Jacobs. We got the David Ornstein. So at this point, we're considering as good as done from a new business perspective for Chelsea. Liam Delap coming in as a striker option for Enzo Maresca for next season. And my tiny bit of analysis on Friday's pod aside, we knew that there was only one man for the job of analysis for Liam Delap for a full breakdown of who he is as a person, as a player, breaking down his strengths and weaknesses and what we can expect. We're even going to have some listener questions at the end of this podcast from our Discord. So join that Discord if you want to get in on some of these lovely transfer analysis episodes. But Sam, first and foremost, you're in full breakdown mode. You're watching all of these matches from all these different players. How are you coping with the start of the transfer window so far?
I think transfer season is breakdowns, like doing football games and then breaking down after. So it's just been
Two
that
different
kind of a
kinds of
month for me.
breakdowns.
So probably going to be that way for the next couple of months. But I am optimistic that we've done most of our adventurous business in the first 5 windows. So this one will be just course correction, essentially looking at what we absolutely need in terms of upgrades, and then holding steady and basically seeing if we can push this T4 competing side into a title competing side and going one step beyond. So yeah, I'm doing my best to keep up. After this, we will obviously be working on Hugo Ekitike, who is a player I really like. But always a pleasure, Nick, doing these with you. Although I don't get the privilege very often. If I do say Dan by mistake, please pardon me because we've done over 50 transfer specials together. So matter of habit, not anything that I'm cheating on you or something. It's just a matter of
No.
habit. So super excited to get this underway.
I've been called much worse things than Dan, so I'm not worried about that. Look, guys, obviously, started this podcast. Just a couple of quick reminders as you are getting ready for the Club World Cup. We are going to be in New York on June 14th, throwing a party, watching the 2012 Champions League final, and having some beers. What else can you really want out of a Saturday afternoon? We're going to be in Atlanta on match day. We're going to be throwing a little bit of a shindig at a bar close to the Mercedes-Benz Arena, which is a beautiful, beautiful stadium in Atlanta for the opener of the Club World Cup. And then, of course, Philadelphia on the 19th of June. We're going to be in doing a lot of fun stuff, including a live podcast and partying with our friends at Michelob Ultra for all three of these things. So if you are coming to any of those or you're just going to be in New York for funsies, please let us know. We're going to have a lot of fun over the next couple of weeks and are super excited to do that. But enough of the pleasantries out of the way, Sam. We are into full analysis mode on Liam Delap, and there's only really one place to start, and it's one of the better stories that a young player could have in terms of pure Barclays legacy. Take it away.
Absolutely. I mean, the comparisons have been at Manchester City to another, freakish centre forward who was the son of a Premier League Barclaysman, and this one, comes close to if you and I have been watching, those peak Barclays era games where you had Stoke City and Tony Pulis, and when there were throw-ins, you just clenched your butt and said, just hang on in there because a Rory Delap throw would come in, stinging in from 30 yards and this, careering off somebody's head from that wonderful Stoke City side. So, son of obviously that Barclaysman, Rory Delap, a man every person feared in the Premier League. So he basically started coaching in Derby City after his playing career. And Liam, his son, joined the academy at the age of 6 or 7. And he stayed there till he was 16 years old. And after that, he was snapped up by Manchester City's academy. And it was the season after where Delap truly took off. He scored 24 goals in 20 games in the PL2. And this was enough for Pep Guardiola to say, okay, there is something happening here. So he was asked to come and train with the first team, something that he was very complimentary about Delap, saying that it was an experience that completely changed his perspective and shaped him as the player that he is. in that season, Sergio Aguero was out for the first 2 months. And there was a game against Wolves where he was essentially the only out and out centre forward that Guardiola was, keen on keeping on the bench. So he was there and he didn't play there, but a few days later, he made a senior debut in the AFL Cup against Bournemouth. He started there and scored an absolutely beautiful goal after 18 minutes with his weaker foot into the top corner. And he would go on to feature that season in the Champions League against Sporting in a 5-0 win. Came on, I think, for Bernardo Silva. But a series of little injuries here and there saw him miss some crucial games. And after that season, it was sort of seen as the ideal move for him to go into the championship and earn some minutes. Essentially, what we've been doing with our talents as well, trying to see if he can handle the physicality, if he can survive a 42 game season and essentially, kick on from there. So he went on 3 loans. First, again, to his dad's old club, Stoke City. Then he went to Preston North End. Then he went to Hull City, where he hit the 10 goal and assist mark for the first time in his senior career, scoring 8 goals. And then Ipswich decided to buy him outright from City. So the deal was 15 million, rising to 20 million. And for a relegated side with very little creative output, he managed 10 non penalty goals in his first ever PL season, which is excellent. Multiple clubs were very keen on signing him, but after United fumbled that Europa League, and obviously we, had that Champions League sealed off. Ben Jacobs, I think, was on the pod saying that he was very keen to go back to Manchester because obviously home's closer. But just that us getting into that top 4 slot and United doing what they did turned his head and said, okay, if you want to be a starting forward at a Champions League side, this is a great place to be. So uh, that's where we stand. Release clause has been paid. I think personal terms have been agreed. So it will move very quickly. And I just want to give a shout out to a friend, STH Burner on X, Seth. Absolutely wonderful Chelsea Twitter account. Please follow him. He's done a really good piece on Medium about like initial impressions of Rolly Delap based on his game against Manchester United. So that also heavily features in the research that I
Liam
did for
Delap,
this piece.
right?
Sorry. My bad. Sorry. I mean, I got confused between two legends, two potential legends. I got confused. But yeah, so he did this excellent piece. And I would definitely give you an impetus to go and read that. So, yep.
If we don't get at least one long throw from Liam Delap at Chelsea, what are we even doing, Sam? I mean, this is where we are. I mean, of note too, with Liam joining Chelsea, he is now one of 6 or 7 former either City staff or talent to come from that academy setup. You obviously have Cole Palmer, Romeo Lavia, etc., but really Joe Shields and Enzo Maresca also know the player. This is like, you know, someone's homecoming just in a different place almost, right?
And if Nico Riley would have joined, that would have been 7. So almost like, 3/4 of our outfield would have been Manchester City graduates. But to be honest, it's turned out pretty well. You look at Tosin obviously took some time to get going, but I think
Yep.
towards the end of that spell, he was quite good. Romeo Lavia's influence we've seen in games when he's not been around, what that happens in terms of the build up, in terms of how we play. Cole Palmer absolutely merits no explanation whatsoever. So it is an encouraging streak of signings, and I think Manchester City not exercising that buyback clause also gave us a little bit of a breathing space because I was a little afraid that they would do it to try and get, maybe they haven't been able to replace Julian Alvarez, but obviously now you have Erling Haaland and Omar Marmoush. So 30 million for him would have been in my head quite an interesting signing. But it's nice that we had a relatively clear run on him. So I'm encouraged by the historical significance of it, and based on what I'm watching, quite optimistic that this turns out well for us.
Okay. Well, we're going to take our first ad break here and then come back and really dive into the profile, the fit, some strengths and weaknesses, and just break down Liam, not Rory Delap, as we move forward. So thanks to the sponsors for supporting the show, obviously, and we'll be right back. All right, Sam, we're back from the ad break here, and I think really looking for what the profile is. I mean, I think there's been a lot of questions, as we have gone through this season where, the start of the season, there was some free flowing football and a lot of shot conversion, and Nico Jackson's on fire. Cole Palmer's on fire. We are getting our primary goal scoring from 2 players. And then the second half of the season, we have to kind of piecemeal it together, right? Kukurea chips in some goals. We get a few from the wings. Enzo Fernandez has a huge second half of the season, so on and so forth. And outside of the Conference League final, the offensive output, specifically from those forward areas, really, really dropped down significantly. And I think that's part of the reason why Chelsea are looking to reinforce over the summer at the striker position, at the winger position, because we know in a really big season, 25-26 is going to be a huge season for Chelsea Football Club, playing in the Champions League against the biggest, baddest teams in the world, that shot conversion and really good forward play is critical to advancing and being successful. So, um, how do you feel like Liam Delap fits into this setup, and how do you feel like his profile complements maybe the forward line that we have?
I think the ideal place to start, Nick, would be probably to see what his tactical fit has been at Ipswich. And we will then sort of figure out whether the strengths that we've seen based on what he's shown during his time there, how they complement what Maresca wants and what kind of a forward role awaits him should he make that transition. But it's an interesting thing because Ipswich absolutely do not play the way that we want to play anywhere in the Premier League or in the Champions League. And when I looked at Liam Delap's games, he's just been used as this long ball reference, almost like a hybrid target man. Reminds me of Victor Osimhen playing under Luciano Spalletti for Napoli, where it was just some semblance of a possession system, and then going long to Osimhen to try and make scraps happen in terms of in the forward areas, and then your wingers come into play. But at Ipswich, Delap played at he spearheaded the attack in a 4-2-3-1, and Ipswich had the lowest average possession in the Premier League. So it wasn't really a side where you can express yourself as an attacker. You very astutely pointed out that there were 46 big chances from Ipswich in that season. And out of that, he ended up managing like 10 non-penalty goals in those chances, and that was a huge thing in a really bad side. But just to give you an example, Delap averaged 3.19 touches in the penalty area, and if you look at the touches that top center forwards had, Haaland had 6.25, Jackson at 5.71. So when you start off at that point where you're having almost 3 touches fewer in the penalty area than other center forwards, then your output is definitely going to be hindered. But if you look at Ipswich, Delap's positioning is quite like a lot of Spanish center forwards, a lot of even Nico Jackson at Villarreal, where he doesn't really play off the shoulder. He likes placing himself a few yards ahead of both centre backs. And what this allows him to do is it allows him to pick up the ball in these little pockets. And he usually receives back to goal. So he does this little thing where he moves and then he moves backwards when the ball is coming towards him. And if there is no centre forward sort of stepping, a centre back stepping up to you, that allows you to receive in the pocket and turn. But on the other side, if a centre back is trying to push and intercept that ball, then he can spin him. And that allows you
Mhm.
to go 1v1 with the other centre back. So that's the logic there. He trusts himself in those tight areas to make something happen. He essentially wants to create that little bit of chaos in the back line, manipulate it from that position. So that's what he does. And yeah, in like in terms of his movement tendencies, a lot of the time, if you look at Ipswich's kickoffs, the first thing that they do is they hit a long ball to the left flank. This is about 50, 60 yards long, always to Liam Delap. And he shifts from centre forward, trying to win the first ball. And then Ipswich try to almost like a rugby or American football game, try to get those first yards out. And from there, they mount their
Yep.
first attack. So this is what they do to take these little advantages. And his first thing is just to move to the left flank. This is something that he does in spells of games also. He just disengages from the centre backs altogether and he goes to the left wing. He's got pretty nice fundamentals for a big target man. Move on the left hand side. He chests the ball really well against the byline. He can control it well. Can also take on people. If you look at his take on numbers, both in the 90 percentile for progressive carries as well as take ons, which is quite absurd for a Barclays center forward. So genuinely one to watch in that area. Out of possession, Ipswich not really very heavy press oriented, not really aggressive in the press. So, what both of those first two guys do in the 4-4-2 is something you call a pendulum press. So, it's one guy going to the center back to press, and the other guy staying on the double pivot to try and make sure that there is no central progression. So, this essentially happens in alternation. So, one guy presses, the other stays, then the other guy presses, Delap drops and stays on the pivot. So, this is how you essentially make sure the structure is very, very compact in the central area. In a deep block, he has a lot of freedom. It's not like he's asked to do too much. So, unless and until you've got a very adventurous center back going in the attacking third, Delap's just told, you know what, pick your space, make sure that you're the first ball out for a counter attack, and basically carry us forward. So, there is a lot of liberty out of possession, which I don't think he will have at Chelsea, because the Chelsea center forward, like Nicholas Jackson, works super hard, and that's going to be a major switch for him. But essentially, if I look at, he scored 33% of his side's goal last season, and only Chris Wood, Alexander Isak, and Mohamed Salah have had more. So everything considered, he's sort of been the polished gem in a side full of very underperforming players and tactics. So I think that's where we come from. It's just a guy who's done very well in a side that probably couldn't have done any better than they did.
Yeah, it shows up on his heat map too. When I was taking a look at that, I mean, first of all, I think it's indicative that some of his heat map is in the defensive third, because Ipswich did have a tendency to get, kind of pinned back during the season. Then he was, I think, as you said, acted as kind of a release valve for them at points, and was able to kind of spring the attack forward and help the entire team kind of advance out of midfield. He does show up a little bit more on the left hand side than he does on the right hand side in terms of just where those hot spots are. But I think your analysis there is spot on, because he sometimes was asked to be the battering ram, sometimes was just asked to, like, for the love of God, get us out of this terrible situation that we're in. That he was kind of that guy for them. And I remember distinctly in the game at home, he came on after, however many minutes, and he left Treff in the dust on that left hand side, where he kind of megged him, and then took the ball forward. So he does have a pretty good technical ability for a guy that's not the smallest guy on the pitch, for sure. But yeah, I think your point on the pressing in particular is really good, because the system that he is entering into, and who knows, maybe Enzo Maresca changes some stuff, because I think tactically we did change at the end of the season to get results. Maybe it's a little bit different to kind of suit the strengths of the players on the pitch, but yeah, I was kind of interested in that heat map when I took a look at it for Friday's podcast, and definitely it checked out.
It's quite good. I mean, you look at the two guys. If he does play for us, the two guys will be in the forefront of that 4-4-2 will be him and Cole Palmer. So maybe there's a City synergy there in terms of how these two guys have played together, in terms of how you press, how well your fundamentals are, in terms of just mentally making sure that everything's okay. That's a good dynamic to have. I think people underestimate those little partnerships. Even we talk about Cobham centre backs. They've played
Mhm.
together, they understand each other. Those things make a difference too. People might not pay a lot of attention to it, but it definitely does.
Let's talk, Sam, about the strengths that he brings to the table, because I think notably he's a different profile than Nico Jackson. We haven't had a ton of center forward depth. We saw that this season with utilizing Cole Palmer up top as a false nine, Pedro Neto, Marguiu, and Kunku. None of these options that backed up Jackson were in any way close to the production that Jackson was able to produce, even when he wasn't producing a ton. But the way that he was able to play and move the ball forward and shield the ball and pass, like, what kind of profile are we looking at from a strengths perspective here? Because I'm imagining it's a little bit different than what we currently have.
That's for sure. And I think he fits really well from a physical perspective. I would say that he's quite
Hmm.
close to Victor Gyökeres, who is, I believe, half an inch taller and 3 kilos heavier. But it's also just the size. I mean, in terms of an upper body, he's somebody who combines the frame of a physical target man with technical foundations of a wide forward. Gyökeres does the exact same thing. He's very good on the flanks when you ask him to run it. We talked about his carrying numbers, Delap's carrying numbers, his dribbling numbers being above normal for a Premier League forward. So it's just this unique combination of a hybrid center forward that they can offer you strength up front. He can offer you the ability to bully center backs, but also not compromise on being a klutz when the ball comes to you. This is a big issue that I had with Victor Osimhen, who I think is, physically maybe a little what you want. I mean, he's very aggressive, very tenacious, but from a frame perspective, we've only seen him at Serie A. We've not seen him anywhere else. And just that versus major technical red flags, I was a little light on that signing, but this guy comes with the same kind of perspective that you would put on a Gyökeres. Just how well can you transform us from a physical perspective as well as this technical standpoint? And I think he does both, which is something that Maresca wants in a center forward. He also
Well,
controls the ball very well.
He's a bull. I mean, not to interrupt, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he is not easy to move off of the ball. He does have the technical flair to kind of get around you if he can't go through you. And I don't know the last time that we had a center for. It's probably Giroud. This is the last time we have maybe Tammy, but I think Tammy is a little more lightweight than Giroud was
Mm-hmm.
from a size perspective. I mean, it's probably been that long since we've had a player that really kind of looked the prototypical number 11 part. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I completely agree with you. And it's just the ability to back into centre backs, the confidence to bully them, the confidence to get engaged. It's something that people quite consistently point out he enjoys, and he's able to do consistently. He's in terms of technical perspectives, Nick, just able to control the ball very well under pressure. So he's got the strength to be able to resist moderate and high level of pressure and able to hold up the ball in those areas, which is, I think, very good to have. And there are these little things like he scans frequently before receiving to understand which way he should turn, which is something like very nuanced perspective. Maybe, they teach you in the City Academy to do that. Big bonus is that he's very comfortable in either foot and he's able to spin off his left and on his right side. There are certain center forwards like Victor Osimhen only turn on their stronger foot. So on the right hand side, they always turn that way. So they can be predictable for an opposition analyst to say, okay, he's only whenever he gets the ball back to goal, this is how he's going to turn. With Delap, he's able to go on his weaker foot and he's confident to like spray passes with his left foot as well. So very, very good to have that in a center forward. Just that he's able to manipulate the ball at high speeds with his left foot as well. Most center forwards in Europe aren't able to do that, under pressure, especially when running, at center backs and essentially making those progressive carries. Footwork in tight spaces is also very good for a guy his size, which is, um, I think, unbelievable to have in the center forward. So just a lot of good things. Physically, I think he's generally the battering ram that you would want in big games against tough center back partnerships. And it's like you said, we haven't had that since Giroud, and probably go back a little bit of Diego Costa. So which also is a weakness that we'll talk about later on. So that's there. But like the second strength, Nick, is definitely his progressive carrying. He's an excellent carrying outlet. Just a guy who's able to pick up the ball in spaces and he drives forward. He's got this powerful frame. So if you remember the game against us, the 2-0 loss, there were a couple of times where Moises Caicedo tried to get close to him and he shoved him off. He like swatted him off, drew a foul and essentially got Moy on a yellow card. Kukureya tried it in a second carry, got swatted off, and that essentially led to a very powerful shot that Jorgensen had to tip over the bar. So able to just hold you off, very armsy, so gets his hands in the mix, tries to push you off. So quite formidable once he gets going. And if you can isolate him against a centre back, which he does when he moves to the left hand side, I think that's when he comes into his own. That's when he knows I've got you where I want you. He will run at you. He will essentially, try to bully you into the box and then make decisions from there. So his dribbling, his I wouldn't say dribbling, but his footwork, his ability to just carry it through space against, in the middle of pressure is quite good to have in a center forward. So that's point two. And the third, I'd probably say just his hold up and his back to goal play. He is quite stocky. So, like we mentioned, just from a physical perspective, he's a shit house. He can, use his palm to push people away. Also, there were a couple of times where he just dangerously gets into positions where on the far post he elbow forearm onto the back to push people away and create a little bit of space for himself. So not afraid of making those maneuvers, getting on the dark side and essentially just giving people a hard time. And in the 2-0 again, I referenced the same game because people are familiar with that game. Tosin, for the first 3 or 4 engagements, absolutely torrid time. Delap got in front of him, hassled him physically, pulled his shirt, made sure that there was no jump that he could get on him in an aerial duel. Last minute, he would just nip in front, take the ball, and distribute it somewhere else. There was a moment where Levi Colville had him against the byline, and we thought, okay, Delap's not going anywhere else. And he basically wrestled Levi to the ground and tried to take a touch towards the byline, but unfortunately, the ball went out for a goal kick. But this is what he does. He's a bully. He's generally somebody who loves and relishes that physical side of the game. So it's not somebody that we've had in terms of that profile. So I'm quite intrigued to see how it translates to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think about Nicholas Jackson in the same context, right? A relative string bean by any comparative standard to the kind of bulkier Delap, and Nico Jackson's back to goal play has improved dramatically since he's been at Chelsea. I think he's been able to pass out of difficult situations, things like that. But physically is able to be moved a lot easier, just by the nature of his size and stature than maybe someone like Liam Delap is. I mean, do you see in this moment? We'll talk about finishing and agility and top speed and stuff like that in a second. Just from a physicality perspective, do you think that he changes the way that we play, and how the ball cycles around, for example, because he does have a little bit more of that stocky frame, more difficult to be moved up top?
I think it's more about preserving the good parts of what Nicholas Jackson gets because you don't want to lose that. Essentially, like you mentioned, there are a lot of things he does outside the box which are invaluable to us. If you see the way
Hmm.
that he spins the center back, his footwork to be able to get in behind, explode in behind for those deliveries, he does everything right in those contexts. It's what you can improve in the box that people have been saying rightly that maybe we need a better finisher. Maybe we need somebody who's more composed. Maybe we need somebody who's
Hmm.
had that cultured education of playing a number 9 position from an academy level and having years and years of being in that position where you've had to hone your finishing. Nico hasn't had that privilege, has had to make that switch from, a wide forwards role to this. So I would say that this is a signing that tries to preserve the right things, Nico's strengths, and then probably tries to add a little bit of garnish on top. So if we talk about just the strength finishing, for example, Nick, it's a small sample size, but he does seem like he has the composure and the variety of finish to just put the ball away from a variety of positions in the box. He prefers to do it from the left hand side, but there have been some very good shots from the right as well, which have gone in. And what he does have over Nico, I think, is just fearsome ball striking. He's got the ability to generate a very powerful shot. And there have been times when on the action replay, the camera has just tried to pan to the ball zipping past, and it's been too slow where the ball is just whizzed past. So that's how powerfully he hits it, and it's something that even catches goalkeepers out because the positioning might be there on the near post, but ball is hit so hard that it just goes, through your legs, through a gap, even touching your gloves and goes in. So I think just the way that he strikes the ball shows a lot of finesse. The fact that he's also got a lot of finesse and power in his weaker left foot also. The numbers say that he's had 12 left-footed shots this season, and he scored 4 of them, which is quite interesting. So the ability to have that in your weaker foot, I think, is quite good. We talked about his first senior goal for Manchester City, getting in behind and absolutely beautiful left-footed finish into the top right corner, gorgeous. So if you get to watch it, please do. Just a great illustration of what he is as a center forward. Just that beast, but also with a little bit of beauty in his fundamentals, in those technical fundamentals, which is really nice to see. And even little things like how he creates separation, the ability to drop his shoulder, make sure that he's
Hmm.
throwing the center back off before he creates that separation, and then he gets those shots away. So those little things, the ability, you do have a wicked shot on you, but are you able to create that space for yourself? Are you able to manufacture your own shots? And the good thing is, playing for a very dire Ipswich side, you know that he's able to do those things. He's able to be in those situations where you just have to hoof the ball up forward and he makes the rest happen by himself. You watch the first penalty incident against us, you watch a couple of other incidents against Southampton where he waited for the ball a couple of times, made things happen for himself. It's what you want in a centre forward. And I think that's what he does. He sniffs for blood and he creates his own chances. So imagine what you can do in a side that creates 120 big chances, which is, I think, quite exciting for me. So um, the other one is I'm a little more bullish on his top speed and agility. People say that he's very quick. I think he's probably lacking the explosiveness of an elite center forward over the first 3 seconds. You look at Alexander Isak and how quickly he generates that acceleration. I think he lacks that.
Lightning. Yeah.
Yeah, lightning. He's got lightning toes, but I don't think Delap has that, which is probably a little bit of. I mean, I still have the same concerns over a couple of other center forwards we were looking for, but he's probably lower down the pecking order in terms of elite acceleration. But he's super agile. Like, he changes directions rapidly from left foot to right
Mhm.
foot, and essentially the how he changes his orientation is very good. Spins like a ballerina. Got some lovely pirouettes on him. And when he does get to top speed, he is very good. He's a locomotive basically. And off the ball, he's able to sprint when he hits top speed. Looks as quick as any center forward, to be honest. So I think that will be quite interesting to see how his acceleration issues translate. And the last thing people have asked me about the most for this preview is like his box movement, and I think that's where he upgrades over Nico. Is the fact that he's good, I would say very good, but can be even better. The fact that he's quite aware of space and he's got these little maneuvers to consciously peel off centre backs. So he will show this run where he's trying to push the centre forwards deeper and deeper into the box. And 1 second before the cutback comes in, he'll either just pause or he'll decelerate and go backwards. And that creates those 2-3 yards for him to shoot. Those things, come from being a natural centre forward. It's something you unfortunately can't teach a winger, or even how you approach, aerial shots or aerial crosses, how you attack the near post. Something he does very, very well. From the right hand side, he shows again the ability to flash across both centre backs to the near post. He will also hang back at the far post and signal for a far post cross. And it's something that we do a lot, Nick, on the right hand side, from Pedro Neto, from Noni Madueke, from Cole Palmer.
Yep.
We go to those right half spaces and try for a far post cross. So my first thing for wanting Osimhen was just that. If you want a world class far post header
Yes.
assassin, it's Victor Osimhen. And it's something that I'm quite intrigued to see if Delap can emulate it, because he does take up those same positions. In fact, you'll find him more towards the far post than you will towards the center of the box between both centre backs. He will try to be between the full back and the centre back on the blind side, or he'll be just away from both centre backs. So he's quite, deceptive in terms of his positioning. And I think his movement is very good and can be polished to be even better. So it'll be intrigued to see how you can get those fundamentals from where they are to maybe a couple of notches more, and how far can he go.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by the box movement as well because I think in free flowing, counterattacking football, Nico is such an excellent option to have. I mean, he's a great passer of the ball. He obviously can do magic in terms of ball control, and he has a very good kind of array of moves that he can deploy. I think it's in those box situations where he does go a little bit missing. Sometimes maybe doesn't have the kind of back and forth movement that you would expect. And so maybe Delap is just a different look for opposition center backs who maybe got a little bit comfortable when Chelsea were static in that final third, especially against low blocks. I mean, that's going to be the telltale sign immediately, right? Is if he can inspire some additional creativity just with his movement in that final third, that would be a wonderful, wonderful thing because we have to convert a hell of a lot more chances this year than we did last year.
Absolutely. And I do believe, I mean, I still have to figure out whether I wish I had a bigger sample size in terms of how good his box movement is, because usually when I do watch center forwards in teams that have 60-65% possession, there are a lot more instances you can log. Ipswich, unfortunately, aren't really the kind of side that have, a high field tilt, who will keep the ball a lot in those advanced areas. And essentially allow Delap to be settled enough to choose his runs, to choose his positioning. It's usually him arriving after making a 30-yard sprint and trying to get into the right positions. It's a little bit frantic, it's a little bit hurried, but from a strength perspective, from just instinctive, shots, being able to be in the right position, trying to create space in the box, he does absolutely have an advantage over Nico. No question about it. And against low blocks, that was the biggest question mark in terms of how can you have a
Yeah.
weapon in there. I think this is something that allows you to have those little advantages. It's just if it's good enough to translate over the long term. But I do believe for that price, for what he's offered and what he's shown in the past, I think it's a very good decision to take that gamble.
All right. Well, we will take our last ad break here and then get into what he will likely need to improve at Chelsea to be a top level striker in the Premier League, to be that 20 goal striker that we've been looking for years. And then we're going to take a few listener questions from our Discord as well to kind of wrap this one up. But thanks to the sponsors for supporting the podcast. We'll be right back. All right, Sam, because you got to take the rough with the smooth. What are some things that this young 21-year-old striker who has played in a much different system with different experiences can do to be the guy at Chelsea Football Club, a club with a lot of history and with very few over a period of 60, 70 years, like pure strikers. We obviously know Costa and Drogba and Osgood and the names of yore, but what does he need to do to be the next in line of those options?
I think if he has to get to Drogba, what he does significantly, he has to improve his aerials. I wouldn't say that
Mm,
it's bad. I mean, I think he's much better in the air than his numbers suggest. And this is, I think, the occupational hazard of looking at certain center forwards and their aerial win percentage and saying, "Oh my God, like this looks bad." But just for instance, you look at Chris Wood, who's the ideal target man. He's lost more aerial duels than anybody else in the Premier League last season, and he's got a win percentage of 39.7%, which sort of gives you an idea when it's a low possession side that wants to play vertical, that wants to be very intense in possession and just go back to front. Then you want your center forward to not just try and win the first ball, but create enough disruption for your wingers to get access to the second ball. And I think that's how we should look at that role that he's played at Ipswich. Jorgen Strand Larsen, for example, 40% win rate. Delap's win percentage is at 42.7%. So he's 16th for the guys that lost the most amount of aerial duels in the Premier League last season. So you do see that he's somebody that has a very good leap. He's got some quality knockdowns when you look at the quality of his headers, ability to cushion it, take the power off, make sure he's laying it off into space. All of those things he can do. His aerial prowess in the box is something that I'm yet to see because Ipswich, very, very low quantity crossers, I think in the bottom three for crosses and obviously bottom for possession. So, how often are you going to get those crosses into the box? How often are you going to get him into good areas? It's something we haven't been able to see. Zero headed goals for him this season.
yep.
So, the doubts will be there in terms of how much can you do against sides that only allow you wide access, and that's a question that I'll be asking of Delap, saying, show us what you can do in a side that offers you more crosses, a quality of delivery from Pedro Neto and Cole Palmer. Can you offer us 5 or 6 headed goals? That's the big question. The second one is something that unfortunately is an
Can,
overlap with Nico
can
Jackson.
I just
Shown,
can I ask about
yeah.
aerials really quick?
Hmm.
This is it seems like a tricky one, right? Because obviously physically he's able to do it, right? He has the strength and size to get up there and compete. In Is an aerial to me like is this something that can be learned, or is it something that some people just have an instinct for, or both? Like I've always wondered this because like Chris Wood is 2 inches taller than he is, right? And I
Hmm.
think much slower, maybe less
He is
explosive, but like this is like Didier Drogba just had a sense for it. Like he just knew where to be at a particular time. Is that something that you think he can improve by a dramatic percentage, or is it like small margins?
very interesting question. I think you at his age, some things can be refined. obviously the leap, all of those physical factors will be the same. It's just like you mentioned, some most traits that can be improved are, I guess, psychological. It's just how you attack the ball with how much vigor and where it is, like in terms of understanding how to minimize the chaos. Like, for example, Ipswich's deliveries are just random. Omari Hutchinson trying to hit near
Yeah.
post low crosses, then you've got one guy hitting high crosses. So it's hard to anticipate where exactly you have to be. And that in a chaotic side can be a little bit of an issue. But if you have guys who offer you one kind of cross, one kind of supply line, I guess it becomes a little more predictable to know where I'm going to be and how I need to attack it. So it just from an individual perspective, I would probably say there is room for improvement when you give him a stable base to stand from and say that, okay, this is where the crosses are going to be. But the rest is psychological. And in Delap's case, the psychology, the psyche is there in terms of, do I want to get down and dirty competing in the air? Absolutely. Do I care that the
Yeah.
guy is 3 inches taller than me? I don't care. I'm still going to go for it. He does do it. Sometimes he doesn't jump. Sometimes he does the hurricane maneuver, which is like basically let the defender jump and just like swipe the feet off and let him crash dangerously. Those are all things that good center forwards do. But in terms of can he be improved in those perspectives, I think he can. He absolutely can. At that age, um, just refining the quality of deliveries, also sort of getting him, because I see everything outside the box and he's very very good at it. It's just I don't think Ipswich have done him justice in inside the box
I,
in
and
terms
I
of giving him that.
and I don't ask that question in a way that's supposed to be snarky or derogatory. I just like
Hmm.
I've watched some really great strikers who have a really great sense aerially for where the ball is going. Right, you have to kind of predict where the ball is going to be, and then the timing of like a snap header, for example. Like I think we're holding Drogba up as the standard here. Is just it's a millisecond to know where to be and to have your head in the right position, to have the force behind it. Like it just it's one of those things that I think you have to have so much repetition on to get right. And it's why you see very few great headers of the ball right now. I don't think there are a ton of great headers in world football right now. It's a completely different game than it used to be. But I was curious about that question when you mentioned headers, because like obviously Nico not a great header of the ball either. You've seen shorter players with a great tendency to leap at the right time and make a connection. And Liam Delap is by no means short. He's 6'1", so I mean this is a guy who should be able to compete aerially. But yeah, sorry to derail. I was just really curious about that
No, no, not
because
at
I
all.
would love I
Because
would love to
no, it
have
is, it
someone on
is.
the end of these crosses that we're putting in, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Erling Haaland also had that criticism directed to him, saying you're so tall. But in the Bundesliga, when the crosses came in, his headers would more often than not just skew wide. And you've got that physical freak who has a really good leap and is able to outjump everybody. But why can't you get your technique refined? And I think those case by case issues can be very interesting to dissect. You have somebody like a Miroslav Klose who apparently spent like half an hour to an hour just jumping, trying to refine his leap because he knew once he got there, he's able to put it in. So technique is there, but the physical limitations are there. So how can you refine it? So getting both of those
Hmm.
things on par is going to be quite interesting. I think Delap has a very good floor for both. He's able to use both things quite well. He has the mentality to not back out of certain situations. It's just how well will we see it at Chelsea is the big question for me. And I do think having somebody like a Cole Palmer, having somebody like a Neto or Madueke who do have good far post crosses, we will be able to see a good amount of it there. Especially with Kukurea also popping up as like a far post threat. When you get into those two v two situations where both those guys are good in the air, with like Enzo Fernandez bombing the box as the third, then you
Yeah.
create imbalances, then you create those issues. And I'm optimistic that Delap will make the most of it there.
I mean, Kukurea, for all intents and purposes, 5'9", right? Not a big guy. Is certainly
Hmm.
not a bulky guy to move people out of the way, but timing is almost always there, right?
Impeccable.
So
Impeccable, yeah.
yeah, so that's just all right. Thanks for entertaining that, because that was like the major question I had about the signing, and frankly, any forward signing that we have is like, if we're going to continue
Mhm.
to spam crosses into the box, who the hell is going to be on the end of
Yeah.
them? You know?
I agree. I agree. It's a very low hanging fruit in terms of, I think, one of 11 crosses finally gets like hit on target or something like that. So it's just very, very rare to make crosses work into something unless you have a freak in the side. So it's a great question. It's just, I'm optimistic. I think he does a better job than Nico, but is he as good as Victor Osimhen? No. That will be my resounding
Yeah.
statement there. That Osimhen is on a different level in terms of how he attacks it, how good his leap is, and how often he does it. It's just very good. But Napoli knew exactly where to hit that cross, and I'm optimistic that when Delap comes in, it's the exact same for him. So yeah, absolutely. And I think the next one that I want to move on to, Nick, is just discipline. It's something that he shares with Nico Jackson. Emotions can boil over. He's picked up some very stupid yellows. I think it was against
Hmm.
Spurs where he got yellowed for talking to the referee for no reason. He racked up 12 yellows this season, which is the joint highest in the Premier League. You don't want that from your key centre forward. You don't want him to get a two-match ban. It just doesn't make any sense. So I would say discipline is something that even people at Manchester City said he needs to refine. He needs to just hold back, use his aggression in the right kind of way. But I don't know that, Nick. It's just like you have these loose cannons like Luis Suarez, who I think need that little bit of madness to function properly. So maybe Delap is one of those guys. So it'd be quite interesting to see how he reins that in. The
I
third
mean, this
is,
is a
I think, a
whole
big
the discipline's a whole thing with the team though. The team needs to get
with the young, yeah, with the
smarter,
younger team. Hmm.
right? And I'm hoping that like the evolution, from like 2 years ago to where it is now, it continues to be on that front. Less talking to the referee, more focused on making the critical challenges. When you have to take a yellow, make it worth it.
Hmm.
I mean, get stuck in like that. That's what I think Chelsea fans were that I hear from are like really annoyed by is like the stupid stuff, the talking to the referee, the yellows that don't really even count for anything. You're not making a game saving tackle, like that.
Hmm.
That's the stuff that makes us like really like, oh man, these guys aren't learning. But yeah, if it's more like, hey, he's the second to last man back and he has to make a critical challenge so the opposition doesn't go through. Great,
Hmm.
we'll take the yellow all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, I mean, there was a spell in between. I think when Nico was on 9, and Moy was also
Hmm.
like away from a two-match ban, and both of them held it well for the next 6 games.
Hmm.
That's the kind of restraint I want to see from Delap as well in this situation. But yeah, I think when I'm looking at it from a holistic perspective, it's definitely a little bit of a red flag for me that you need to be disciplined. No matter how aggressive you are, just hold it in for the better of your team. So that's one. The other one,
Correct.
Nick, I really want to talk about is his defensive acumen. I think maybe this is just him playing for Ipswich, and it's obviously he's required to do these long progressive carries where he's sprinting 40, 50 yards up the pitch. So he knows he needs to preserve his sprints. He knows he needs to preserve his gas tank for those maneuvers. But when you look at him out of possession, he can be quite good where he's charging down two players back to back. But there have also been multiple instances where he's just been lackadaisical, where he's let the pivot receive unmarked, and sometimes the defensive pivot has the ball and is like 3 yards away from him, and he doesn't challenge, he doesn't make the effort
Mm.
to move. So I would say quite infrequent. His execution is inconsistent and needs to be better. It's he's not the kind of player who I would say Arsenal, we give them a lot of grief for what they are and what they represent, but in terms of just having a center forward or a forward line that works really, really hard, you look at Bukayo Saka, you look at Martin Odegaard, you look at even Havertz, for example, he worked his ass off for us. And you look at even Gabriel Jesus. Their pressures, their out of possession work is phenomenal. And it's something that you look at Delap and you say he's not there yet. So I would say that
Yep.
defensive work, that defensive industry is lacking for me. And he can be better at it. And hopefully, if he preserves his energy better in our system, then you can expect him to make more of an effort in that side of his game. So that's something that I would want him to do. The other bit is his positioning. We talked about how he usually starts a little further away from the last line, so almost like in a 9.5 position. He's trying to receive in those pockets. And what that does is, in certain situations, when he's receiving the ball, spreading it out wide, because he doesn't have top tier acceleration, he's usually not there in the right positions for headers. He's not there in time for crosses. So it affects his ability to be in the box sometimes at the right place at the right time. So perhaps that little lack of acceleration is a disadvantage in those situations. And I think his positioning can be a little more adventurous. Maybe he should play, on the shoulder. It's great that he gets caught offside once every 2 games, which is a huge refreshing change from Nico at his worst. But
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
yeah, but you would want your center forward to be in those central areas. It's something that we've seen Jackson's positioning change. Like Poch wanted him to drift left, right, deep. Maresca just said none of that crap. Go only wide when you have the opportunity to exploit a fullback, but other than that, stay central. So it'll be interesting to see if his positioning changes. With Maresca offering him, just go 2 steps further and don't worry so much about like between the lines because you've got Palmer there, we've got Enzo there. So
Yep.
again, something to consider tactically. And the last one is I mean, it's really a weakness. I would just say there's a lot of scope for improving because I see some very promising things in his creative side and his vision. There are a couple
Yep.
of times when he receives in between lines, and he's got this beautiful Trivela, which is the outside of the boot pass. And he's picked out like an excellent through ball against Southampton, I think. He's picked out a beautiful Trivela for a runner against Manchester United. So he's got that in his locker as well. This ability to be slightly away from the defense and to have more passing options in front of him. So there's even a chance that as and when he gets better in a side with the caliber of Palmer and everybody else, there is a chance that he gets more assists. So that's actually a positive for me. But I'm saying right now it's a little inconsistent, and that I can blame maybe on Ipswich saying you only have these many seconds of the ball a game. So go quick, go fast, make those decisions quick. Because if the ball is lost, then it's not coming back for the next 10 minutes. So that's maybe attributed to the unit rather than him. But I think that's something that we probably could see a big improvement in when he comes to play for us.
Well, let's round this one out because I think it's been a comprehensive look at the young Liam Delap, who joins Chelsea, 12 goals, 2 assists in the Premier League last year, to his name, and a team that created double the chances that Ipswich did in the Premier League alone. So a lot going on there, especially big chances. Let's talk about first from our boy Arch in the Discord. How does Delap differ from Jackson? I think we've talked a little bit about this, but just to be, to put a fine point on it. And then, I think he also wants to know, like, will the over the top balls that like a Palmer and Enzo and Reese play, will he be able to get on the end of those and do something with them where maybe we haven't to this point as effectively?
So that's a very good question. I would probably just quickly annotate this with like the points that we've discussed. In terms of Delap being better than Jackson, I think ball striking is better. I think
Mhm.
composure on 1v1s is definitely better. Long range striking is definitely better. Box movement is better. Heading is better. Aerial duels in general is better. What is worse is his out of possession defensive work. I would also say his acceleration in terms of beating people 1v1 and racing past somebody, Nico is much better. He just got that quickness about him. So when you talk about
Yeah.
like balls over the top, I think Jackson would probably do better in those situations. There are not a lot of situations where you see Delap making those runs in behind and actually getting that kind of ball over the top and then latching onto it. I think in those situations, it will be interesting to see what he does. There's one situation that I have seen where he nipped in against Southampton in front of Bednarek, who's also like a slightly slow centre back at this point, then getting 1v1 and finishing it off under Ramsdale. I mean, I'm being respectful, but I'm being respectful. I mean, so he basically latched onto that misplaced pass, getting in front of him, getting that touch ahead of the centre back, getting 1v1 and scoring. But it's not the kind of chances. At least I've not seen the EDS tape from him at City. But in terms of just racing in behind and getting into a foot race, I think wouldn't be ideal for Liam Delap. It just wouldn't fly for me.
No.
He's more of a stay behind the guy, get 1v1, and then create issues with your shooting. That's a slightly different forward to what Nico Jackson offers. So that's what the difference is going to be for me. But crosses from both all those guys that you mentioned, Reese, Enzo, Palmer, Neto, Delap, I would say like much better suited to make use of it than Nico Jackson.
Yeah, people forget how fast Nico is. He has challenged He's given Saliba, Kanate, like some of the fastest center backs in this league, all they can handle, and much much more. So, I think in terms of just like that quick twitch, sort of like get in behind, ghost past someone. Yeah, they're different players in that regard for sure. So,
Hmm.
from Graham Cracker, which is a great little pseudonym there. Uh, where does CFC Central rank Delap as far as value for money against Osimhen, Ekatike, Shesko, Yorkerez, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Value for money. Come on, put on the financial analysis, Sam.
I mean, I would say probably like in terms of just from a financial perspective, I would say number one. Like I generally think that in terms of taking that low risk, high reward gamble, there is nobody better in this situation that you could go for. If you look at Osimhen, the release clause is what 80 million. The fees, the wages are 250. Ekitike is anywhere between 80 to 100. Sheshko is somewhere between 60 to an 80. Big wages also. Gyökeres is 60 to 80. Probably like 60 is the release clause, what Ben Jacobs said. And the wages will be astronomical based on the 80 golden assist season that he's had. So, in terms of just going towards those names and saying, where can you find value? I would just give you an example here, Nick. Two 2 seasons ago, I was talking to I think Seth or somebody else, and the name that popped up on my radar was Victor Gyökeres at Coventry, and we talked about like, hey, could this be a good striker to take a gamble on? And we discussed it, and we said no. He's playing in the championship. He's played in a two striker formation where obviously the load is shared. The numbers can be a little bit deceptive. So perhaps not really the best option to go for at his age. When he's gone to Brighton, he's failed. He's essentially got his move to the championship, had one good season with like relatively good numbers, shown some good things, but do you want to take that gamble on him? And Sporting did, and that's the reward that they reaped. So if you're going against all those principles and saying let's take the gamble on a 30 million guy who's had essentially Ipswich is a championship team in the Premier League, performed very well for them, and put up the kind of numbers that you would want from a striker that you can improve, then my bet for Gyökeres would definitely be Liam Delap, which is why I'm saying I'm not saying it's 100% confirmed that he's going to be a superstar center forward, but I'm saying based on everything that you're seeing on the eye test and the numbers, it suggests that in a better team, he will 100% be much better than we've seen at Ipswich. So I'm hoping I'm right on that one, but I'm big on him. I think he's number one in terms of value.
Number one in terms of value. So I think I would assess the value piece a little bit more, right? Like my number one characteristic for any striker that we come in is what's their potential to be a 20 goal Premier League striker, right? Chris Wood was last year. So like it's not saying like it's out of the question for any Premier League striker to get to 20 goals. And I think like as far as like being the finished article, like Victor Osimhen is number one there. I know it's a lot of money and I get it, but I also just want the balls to go in the back of the net more. So the value for me is Chelsea guaranteed Champions League football and guaranteed being competitive in the Premier League and challenging City, Arsenal, Liverpool for honors. Like that to me is value, not just the cost of the player. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't believe that Victor Osimhen will be coming to Chelsea, but yeah, I guess a sidebar question is something that I asked on our Twitter last night, Sam, as we were going in. I asked just the simple point. Uh, what is your striker preference moving forward now that Liam Delap is signed? And I only gave four options, and I'll put them in here so you can see them. I said sign Ekatike, which we will, I'm sure, talk a little bit more about. Sign Yorkerez, sign Osimhen, or keep Nicholas Jackson, right? As these are the two that we have. Of those preferences, what is yours?
That's a very tough one. But I mean, looking at financials, purely from financials, I would keep Jackson. I think that you should definitely not make the same mistake a lot of clubs have done. We talk about, oh, Alex Isak, he's been so good. People forget he's been playing senior football since he was 16 years old. And
Mhm.
it's now he's 24. He's got 8 years of senior experience behind him. And what he's showing in the Premier League isn't something that just popped up overnight. He's had chance to hone it, develop it. We're talking about a player here who Nico, not in terms of playing style, but in terms of just his experience. We talked about Diego Costa, who wasn't playing academy football till he was 16, 17 years old. To have that kind of a talent and to mold him and to give him that, that ability to fail and say, okay, have the confidence to make mistakes and do the issues. I think Nico has to be given that kind of confidence to go for the third season and say, okay, don't be the number one man, but like compete. I think that's the mistake that we made with Nico. We should have given him a competitor from season one, saying fight for your place and try to show us what you have. And it's been him trying to fight against Mark Guiu this season, and last season we had nobody else. So it's been quite an easy ride for him, especially against Christopher Nkunku. No competition whatsoever. So maybe we messed up there in terms of a squad building perspective, but I would say that I have a bad feeling that if you let Nicholas Jackson go, he goes somewhere and he becomes that forward that we always thought he was going to be. And we know the pitfalls of finding, getting that center forward from a Bundesliga perspective, paying him superstar wages, and then seeing that the
Mhm.
system doesn't match in. Osimhen again, Serie A, Turkish league numbers look very good. You talked about Chris Wood. I mean, he's hit what double digits in the Premier League 5 times before this. So there is history in terms of can he go in double digits? Chris Wood did. Osimhen has done double digits for quite some time, so maybe there's a very good chance that he does it. If he was lesser on his wages and if the fee was quite decent, my number one pick would have been Victor Osimhen, but it's not. So Gyökeres, I think I like a lot of things about him. I think his link up and hold up play is better than any centre forward on this list. But the Portuguese league does not offer certain things.
No,
Low blocks,
no.
how to dismantle them. We've seen Ruben Amorim come in and look like he's never coached before. So that's the big fear for me with him, and that's why I would keep the devil versus the angel you don't. So I'm definitely going to give Nico Jackson that belief. I mean, scoring in a final is a good start. You made up that
Mhm.
debt that you talked about to your teammates. Just make it one better. Just make it one better in the next season.
Yeah, I'm totally aligned there. I mean, I think I would have just gone after Osimhen to compete with Jackson. I think now that you have Delap, you have actual competition for Nico for the first time in 3 seasons. Like obviously, Nkunku was not offering that. Marquis was never supposed to offer that. I think that was just a product of poor recruitment. I think someone like Samu Omarodian would have definitely given Nico a run for his money in the team. But yeah, I would just keep Nico and really focus on production from the winger perspective as we move forward. So let's go down to Satchet here. Do you think that Liam Delap can contribute in a way that Palmer has done for us? How far away is he from the finished article? I think the context here, Sam, is like Palmer comes in, relative unknown, obviously breaks out immediately. Do you see a similar breakout for Liam Delap?
Let's just be absolutely on point here and say what Palmer did is a once in a generation kind of thing. It is very,
Correct.
very, very rare for a player to come in and do that. Especially with a center forward his age, I would probably say center forwards mature slightly later than wingers do. So I would expect him to be somewhere close to his best, maybe after 2 or 3 seasons in the Premier League. And it's the same argument that I throw for Nico Jackson, which is why the experienced guys, Victor Osimhen, make a lot more sense to me. So when you look at them being at the forefront of their title-winning campaigns and essentially being leading marksmen, yes, Victor Osimhen has a massive advantage there. But I don't think we see the best of Liam Delap until he's like 23 or 24. I do think we see a better version of him than what we saw at Ipswich. A lot of positive things, but I do think that we have to give him we have to invest in him like we did in Madagascar and say, okay, here's a 5-year deal. Out of that 3 years, we're going to give you all the chances you need to sort of compete with whoever it is at center forward. Earn your place, give it your best, and see what we can do. I don't think he's going to be 20, 25 goals, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes like 15 goals, or 10 goals. 10 goals he'll cross quite easily, in my opinion, if he starts as center forward. But 15 is where I'm seeing in his first season, saying that's a good mark to get.
Yeah. So, I mean, 12 goals to assists last year. He was obviously the guy for Ipswich. Had a slight injury break in there. I think played about 200 more minutes than Nico did on the season. Nico was obviously out injured for a good stretch of time there in the spring. Translating that forward in a team that created double the big chances in the Premier League, I think it's not a stretch to get, to 15, 16, 17 goals in less minutes than he had at Ipswich, probably. Um, but for whatever reason, that 20 goal mark is one that's difficult for Chelsea players to cross regularly. And so my hope is that with some patience and in a season or two, he's able to kind of accelerate his development in a way that he is able to kind of break through that 20 mark. But I would exercise patience. One, because any striker signing that we have, we need to exercise patience on. And two, he is just entering that like firm professional development phase of his career. And will need some time in a new system with a new manager, philosophy, players around him to figure out who he's going to be, who he's going to become. So I think that's going to do it for this one, Sam. Adam B 3131 and CFC Tahoe Blue asked questions that we already covered in terms of aerial threat and hold up play and things like that. So thanks to them for asking those questions, obviously. But I think we're going to wrap here. What's your final word on Liam Delap as we finish this one out and transition our focus to other targets for the summer?
Well, I think you should be excited. It's everything you want from your sporting directors is to make a move that makes financial sense and that tries to go for quality. Obviously, it's very easy to say, okay, 80 million, spend that Champions League money or whatever, but that's what puts you in the hole in the first place. So yes, I think there's going to be a second forward signing. Genuinely, I think there's going to be like a TK if Liverpool don't move, or there can be a surprise name in there. But I think in terms of taking a very low risk, high reward gamble, you've looked at a player who the recruitment side knows very well. Maresca knows him well. Joe Shields knows him well. In terms of his quality, in terms of everything that we've seen him do in his first season, I think there's enough to suggest that there is, at best, a starting centre forward for you in a Champions League team over the next 2 years. And at worst, a very reliable option in the final stages of games who you can throw on and say, get me those headers, get me, forward up the pitch, make sure you're causing a little bit of disruption in the box. So it's just, you know, trying to see where he fits on that spectrum. But in terms of giving him the development time in a high level competition, I think it'll be quite good, especially in the Champions League where space is on offer. I think he could offer a lot of positive things for us. Just having two centre forwards there makes my heart happy, then Nick. So I'm quite happy to see where it takes us.
Well, you heard the man, Sam. The first of many of these specials as we go through the season. Hopefully, the next few are very interesting targets. I'm looking at that left wing myself as in a huge area for improvement. We'll take it away from there. But thanks for all the hard work on this one, and Chelsea community obviously give Sam his flowers for all the analysis. We will be back with a ton of content. Don't you worry. And if you're in New York on the 14th of June, if you're in Atlanta on the 16th of June, if you're in Philadelphia on the 19th of June, come party with us. We're going to be there. We're going to have some fun. So until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.